Now, just to give you an example of how ridiculous our system is, Air Services have put an ADSB transmitter in at Horn Island, just not very far from where this accident site was. But below 18,000 feet at Horn Island, there is no controlled airspace. And so the pilots change onto to the aerodrome frequency and talk to each other in the way they would have in the 1930s to separate. That's an ideal airport to put controlled airspace, seeing we now have automatic dependent surveillance broadcast, and all of the airline traffic coming in from 18,000 feet and above has had equipment fitted now for over a year. So what I'm commenting about with this regulatory impact statement is that the document was done 6 or 7 years ago. It was originally based on the fact that they were going to subsidise general aviation aircraft. They were going to pay for the equipment to go in the general aviation fleet of about 8,000 aircraft. And that would be the only way you could justify it, because fitting ADSB equipment has some savings to the airlines when it comes to direct tracking in controlled airspace that would give them probably some millions of dollars per year savings. But general aviation really can get no measurable saving out of it.
And Mr. Smith, that's inconsistent with what the regulation impact statement said. It said there were savings across the board.
Yeah, the regulation impact statement is severely flawed. It's a completely dishonest document.
Who made that statement, Mr. Smith? Who put that statement out?
The statement was put out by the Civil Aviation Safety Authority.
Right.
And it's quite amazing what happens in a bureaucracy if someone makes an error, and it's quite simply there's been a serious error made, that then everyone closes ranks and says, no, don't even discuss it. And I've even had a special meeting with the Minister, Warren Truss, about a year ago or over that about this, and he finally came back to me and said, look, it was done in 2009, so it can't be relooked at. I'm sure he would have been told by the bureaucracy, oh, Minister, you know, we can't really relook at that, and he would have been given all these reasons. And I even asked Jeff Boyd, who's now the chairman of the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, and I said, look, you've got to get the Civil Aviation Safety Authority to relook at this. There's serious errors in it. It needs to be done accurately. The CASA expect pilots to be honest. I said the Civil Aviation Safety Authority has to be honest. But so far, Jeff Boyd hasn't been able to get this relooked at. And the problem is, in about 18 months' time, a requirement comes in that every single aeroplane in Australia that flies in cloud, and that's every little plane that flies at Burke or Broken Hill or Bathurst, the flying school, will have to spend anything between $10,000 and $20,000 in fitting this equipment, but they will get no measurable advantage at all because they're in uncontrolled airspace. And so even though if there happens to be an ADSB transmitter close by, and Air Services, to save money, have hardly put any in, the number they've put in gives coverage above about 29,000 feet, but down at 2,000 feet, America is putting them right across the country to give coverage to 2,000 feet. But Air Services haven't done that because that's the way of maximising profits, but saying we're the first with ADSB when in effect at low level where you need it to prevent planes running into mountains, we don't have any coverage. But let's say I happen to know there is coverage with ADSB at Birdsville, there's a transmitter there, but the small planes, their position will appear very accurately on the air traffic control screen in Brisbane, but because the pilots are in uncontrolled airspace, the controller will call the pilot and say traffic is, which is what they did in the 1930s, traffic is aircraft, a Metroliner, Rex Metroliner doing an approach, and the pilot then will have to change off the air traffic control frequency, become the air traffic controller, call up the plane and self-separate. Let me explain. If it was the American system, or in fact the system in just about every other country I've flown in, and I'm fortunate to have done 5 flights around the world and studied airspace everywhere, that the plane in cloud would be under air traffic control, wouldn't necessarily be told about the other plane, would be just told commence the approach or hold at 5,000 feet, turn left, turn right, and be in effect vectored to the approach or told to do the instrument approach, which is in the flight plan. A plane departing might be told to hold on the ground for 2 or 3 minutes until the plane coming in was visual. Now, the problem with, and the reason I've linked this regulatory impact statement with One Skies, is that they're purchasing One Sky system for the old airspace system. One of the reasons we haven't gone to the airspace system that was government policy under the Hawke government and Kim Beazley as minister in 91 and then 93 is because there's a number of claims. One is that it will require a huge number of extra air traffic controllers. And you've already heard that the cost is nearly $1 billion a year for our air traffic control now. But the interesting thing is, when you fly in Australia, and I fly all the time, I flew my aircraft down today, you fly a lot of the time...
Was it a helicopter?
Yeah, I happened to fly a helicopter today, but it can be
You won't say which one it was like.
Yes, I won't say whose helicopter it's similar to. But I do fly. I fly a Citation jet, single pilot, which I own. I've been very fortunate. I fly a Cessna Caravan, which I took to Kimberley's a little while ago, wonderful plane. And I have a couple of helicopters too, and I came down in my Augusta 109E, which is a twin-engine, single-pilot, instrument-rated helicopter. And so I'm flying all the time, and I just know what the system's like. And compared to other countries, in Australia, you're almost in complete silence all the time. And I've said to the air traffic controllers, but couldn't you do a little bit more workload, like actually give us an air traffic control service where we need it? And quite a few of the controllers have said to me, well, of course we can, but don't tell anyone I told you that. And when I fly to Ballina, and I go there from time to time, I've been there, and you get this superb service from Bankstown. It's air traffic control. You just do what you're told. And so you get told to taxi out to the runway, you ask for clearance for takeoff, the controller says turn right to 120 degrees, you meet the airways, he or she says turn left, and you follow the airway under air traffic control. The most amazing thing is, as you get to 8,500 feet, which is the only place on the whole trip where you could actually run into somebody, because up at 45,000 feet, the airways are separated going towards Brisbane and to the right by about 10 miles from the one coming the other way, and up at 45,000 feet where our fly, it's very unlikely to have anyone there anyway. But when you actually get down to below 8,500 feet, where the statistics show that's where the mid-air collisions can happen, and it's where you can run into a mountain, I then get told as the pilot, and I'm a single pilot when I fly the plane, I don't have a co-pilot to start writing down call signs. I get told, traffic is, and the worst situation I was given 4 other aircraft, because Lismore approach happens to be mingled up with the approach to Ballina. And I write down on my pad 4 planes, and then I change off onto the aerodrome frequency and I start calling these planes and trying to sort out where they are. Now, to an Aussie pilot, well, that's just normal. That's the way we do it. But if you are a pilot from another country, you simply cannot believe that a leading aviation country in the world could have something that is so archaic. If we brought in some Class E Echo airspace as planned 20 years ago, the en route controller who's doing the en route, it's not an additional controller. Instead of that controller giving you traffic information on 3 or 4 aircraft, the controller would look at her radar screen down to about 3,000 feet, and below the radar screen they would look at their flight strips on the electronic display, and it's called procedural separation, and they would separate you. They would say hold at 6,000 feet or do the approach, and they'd say I'm holding an aircraft on the ground to depart. And what I find incredible is that after 20 years we haven't even got one airport in. And I've said to people who are against it, because resistance to change is staggering, I've said, look, let's just try one. If it is going to require hundreds of extra controllers, we obviously can't afford it. But my advice is it will not. And the pilots who say they don't need it, I said, I think you'd find that after flying in it for 3 or 4 months, you'll find this is a fantastic system.
Can I just go to the issue of the One Sky? You said earlier that the One